And it's Pride Month! Okay, before we get started here, I just want to say that there's not going to be any gaming talk in this memory dump. It's going to be a bit more of a meta discussion about my channel and me. The game in the background is Unsighted, an amazing game about gay robots, which I will be covering in detail in probably my next memory dump. Alright, so let's make this official. I'm trans. My name is Gwendolyn, Gwen for short. This video is going to start off with how that's relevant to the channel, move into why I'm even making this official, and then ending with a bit of my story. Yeah. Basically, my intent is to put all the channel important things up front, and then you can get off the ride when you feel like it. Alright. And before I go any further, I am dropping this disclaimer here. So, I'm a trans woman. I spent hours upon hours doing my research in articles, speaking with doctors, reading scientific journals, researching what half the terms in some of those studies in those scientific journals meant, and I'm not here to field any conversation on the validity of transgender people. We exist, it's biological, it's science, and if you actually care about the truth, I'll drop some links in the description below to get you started. But I'm not going to take you through the entire thing. You can do some work yourself. And if you just want to argue, go away. I'm not interested. I will not engage. You just remove the comments. I don't care. You'll be wasting your time typing. Alright, so disclaimer over. Let's begin. What does this mean for my channel? No, almost nothing, honestly. The branding might be different, but the content is mostly going to be just the same. I just want to play games badly in front of people and have a good time. I think the only difference I can think of has already kind of happened. I've become more open with sharing my thoughts on things. You see, for the longest time, I felt more concerned with putting a filter over myself so people would only see the parts of me that they deemed acceptable. More backstory on that in the story section of this video later. So yeah, I'll tackle that later, but I'm not moving away from gaming content, nor am I expanding the scope of my channel. Like, I just wanna game on and be myself. I just won't be holding my tongue to spare the feelings of, the willfully ignorant who, peaked in middle school. For example, years back, I was gonna do a memory dump on sexism in gaming. But the response I got to that announcement was people telling me not to go all feminist on them or warning me not to go all woke. And at the time, I didn't have the courage to challenge that. And it's actually the reason I stopped doing memory dump and those kinds of videos. So, you could thank that kind of crap for depriving you of that, for better or worse. But now, I'm going to talk about what I want to. So I've been out to myself and those close to me for years now. I carried on with the channel as it was. So why make a big deal out of it now? Is it just Pride Month's just a convenient time to come out to the rest of the world? Yeah, I guess. I think honestly it's just sort of fatigue. Like, I just want to be myself. I haven't gone by Jason in years. It's not my name. I hated, omitting my name altogether from my video intros because I didn't want to use the old one. And I knew that the new one would just trigger some snowflakes to implode. Implode they did. I recently started Oblivion. And threw the trans and pride flag on the thumbnails, changed the little character, and my subscriber count has just started dropping. And you know what? Years ago, that would have probably gutted me. Honestly, that would have been, broken. But now, okay, cool. I'm done chasing for approval from people who hate me. It's easier to be confident in who you are than in trying to defend a facade you don't even believe in. But the response, to, just those little changes, kind of reinforced the second reason I wanted to make this official. With all of the trans hate and misunderstanding currently out there, I felt that simply by existing out in the open, I could help sort of contribute to the normalization of trans people. And it would be easier for other LGBTQ people to know that they have a safe space in my little corner of the internet. Since coming out on here, I've gotten all kinds of rude and vulgar comments. But I think the worst ones are the ones that appear to come from a place of concern. I've spent decades of my life depressed. And for people to say that they're sad for me now that I'm happy and just being myself, it's kind of like saying that they're sad that I'm not depressed anymore. What is wrong with you? It's also fascinating to me that there's so many people who, break out the old, well, I've been a viewer for X number of years, and then like act all disappointed in me now. It's like, buddy, I was always this way. And by your own admission, you love the content. So instead of going, oh look, I watched a trans person for years and enjoyed it. Maybe trans people are just people. They act like it's some sort of horrible betrayal because the label says something different now. Like, we've rebranded your chocolate milk and now you hate it. Okay, whatever. I think now more than ever, visibility matters. Yeah, I guess I'll just get into the story now. Back when I first started doing YouTube, there was a short-lived trend, I think anyways, of creators, telling their stories. Hell, actually, I don't even know if it was a trend. I just noticed a bunch of the creators I watched at the time do it. But they basically gave like a little mini backstory on themselves, and explained how it related to their channel. And I think now's a good time for me to do mine. Not from the expected lens of what got me into gaming. I can do that another time. But I want to tell my story in the context of how my original goal for the channel was one of self-improvement. So let's rewind. Let's go way back to the beginning. Story time here. I grew up in the 80s, pre-internet, in a very sheltered conservative Christian home. Like, I wasn't even allowed to watch stuff like Ninja Turtles. Because I remember I was able to watch it a little bit. It was kind of like, okay, we'll let you we'll sort of feel it out a little bit. But one of the episodes had a crystal in it, and that was occultic. So like, so I was completely sheltered. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what being gay was until like 7th or 8th grade. I was like, what's gay? Like I was the dumbest kid in class because I didn't know anything. Because I was so freaking sheltered. But before all the bullying and everything really kicked up, let's back up a bit. Let's go back to I want to say it was either kindergarten or 1st grade. I want to say that's when things really started to get bad. Oh yeah, it got bad early. And I don't remember exactly. I think it was 1st grade. Anyways, the teacher had this habit of splitting the class into girls versus boys activities, and I just naturally went with the girls because that's what felt right to me. And one day she lost it on me. Like right there in front of the whole class, she called me an idiot and asked if I even knew what the difference was between boys and girls. And I remember just staring at her in terror and embarrassment. And she asked if I was a boy or a girl. And I remember this voice in my head screaming, girl. But I knew the answer she wanted to hear was boy. And she basically just stared me down until I finally mumbled out, boy. And she told me to go sit down. And, like, no internet, no exposure to any quote-unquote agenda. Like, I was effectively in a vacuum, but there was just that innate sense of self. Like, in my dreams, I've always been female. It wasn't about what I wore. It wasn't anything sexual. Like, God's sake, I was 5 or 6. Like, there was nothing like that. It's in my mind, it's always been that way. I just understood that I was a girl. And everyone else kind of did too, like even subconsciously. I'd almost all the time side with the girls in arguments because what they said just made more sense to me. I got along more with the girls. All my friends were girls until I got shamed and bullied hard enough that I stopped hanging out with the girls. And then the boys thought I was just the dumb girl, so I wasn't hanging out with them either. And eventually I did make a small handful of friends over the years, but I slipped in and out of friend groups. One thing I learned early on was that by using the idea of like equality or realism, I could sneak some femininity into things. Like, I remember playing with my, I guess we'll call them action figures, my little character mobs. It was so weird. My parents were like, they were really sheltering, but they I guess they had a little bit of an idea of that if they sheltered too hard, that it would be bad. So like, you can't watch the show, but here's the action figures because you're in charge of their actions with the action figures or something. I don't know. I guess that was the thinking. But no Barbie for me. No, not for lack of trying. But anyways, I remember looking over at my mom and going, hey, I've got all these characters, but they're all boys. Like, why aren't there any girls? That's not realistic. And this pattern I would learn over the years was unfortunately actually very realistic due to, rampant sexism. But it did get me some female characters to play with, so yay, there was a win. in games, like with video games, which was an early means of coping. I'd always have to come up with an excuse as to why I choose female characters. I had to come up with these excuses. I would actually be like challenged and questioned on these things, or I'd have to come up with justifications why I was playing games which starred female characters. It's one of the reasons I grew really attached to Samus, because those questions never happened, because she was fully armored. So it's like everyone it was like, oh, okay, whatever. That checks. It's cool. Armored person. But I have to come up with stuff like smaller hitboxes. The game was just really mechanically good. I can't help it. It's such a good game. She had a fighting style I liked. On and on and on and on, stuff like that. And while I never used the "if I'm going to be staring at a character's backside for hours, it might as well be a woman's" excuse, I didn't deny it when guys used it for me. It was just, more convenient to lean into it. And then came puberty. When I learned about the upcoming body changes, that's when my depression really started kicking into high gear. And since I was, still Christian at the time, I prayed and prayed that I wouldn't grow facial hair. Thanks God. One of the guys in class, around the time, actually had a hormone imbalance and needed to be put on blockers because, he was developing breasts. And I remember I prayed for a year straight that I'm like, oh man, can I have one of those imbalances? Like that, so I could develop the right way. Like maybe God heard the prayer in the first place, but he got the delivery wrong. He gave it to the wrong kid. I'm like, darn it, God, no! I'm right here. But anyways, no such luck. The depression and the bullying continued. And now that I had surrendered myself to referring to myself as a guy, they could use referring to me as gay and or a girl as an insult. And as I entered high school, the accusations of being gay were relentless. I remember, I guess I will say one of the better memories, well, I wouldn't say better, but one of the more poignant ones, like stands out to me, was a conversation I had with a good friend. I still consider him a friend, one time during lunch, and he wanted to know, without judgment, if I was actually gay. Because the accusations were so much, he was like, okay, maybe there's something there. And he made it clear that he was fine, if I was. And my word-for-word quote, I remember, like, word for word, my response was, I'm like a gay guy without the gay. I'm just really in touch with my feminine side. Like, really in touch. I'm basically all feminine side. So it's like this thing I've always sort of known. But anyways, moving on, like, I couldn't even hang out with women, because I was still in that Christian culture, which had to keep people they perceived as male away from women, lest they be tempted or some garbage. So all the people I got along the best with were off limits. Like, no. Go hang out with those guys over there who hate you. Thanks. So, time passed. I was depressed, suicidal. Always trying to act how everyone wanted me to. I was terrified of talking to people. I hated people. I needed to figure out how to get over that fear. And I started my channel because I figured exposure would help. And it did a bit. But ultimately, I still found myself worried that I wasn't being who everyone wanted me to be. If you watch my older videos, it's painfully obvious that I was so worried about how I was perceived. One fun little anecdote. I'm pretty sure I've shared this a few times, but it's relevant to put here, so I'll tell it again. Back in 2014, when I started my Elder Scrolls Anthology playthrough for my channel, I guess I'm lying a little bit about no game talk. Oh, well, whatever. If you bailed early, I'm sorry. During character creation, I still had that mentality of needing to justify playing a character I connected more with. So during Arena's character creation, when the question of gender came up, I figured a coin flip offered me a good enough cover. It was a good enough chance. I was like, well, I'll flip the coin and just fingers crossed that I get female. And I had said heads male, tails female, and that coin landed heads. And in that moment, like in that split moment, I thought to myself, there is no way I am playing through this entire series as a man. And so, anxiety-ridden, because I hate lying, even if it's the tiniest lie, I lied and said the coin had landed on tails. And that mentality actually lived on for some time after, because years later in Battlespire, I'd make Lex a male because I still had that hadn't shed that mentality, and I figured I needed to use him to even out all of my female character choices I had made on my channel. Anyways, back to the main part of the story. So we come to 2016-ish. It was around there. And I finally, for the first time, actually heard the term transgender. Because like up all this time, like I actually shed the whole Christian culture thing rather late, honestly. Finally, like after all this time, I was finally able to cut that out and start just thinking. And I learned what the term transgender was, and went, wait a minute, that's how I've been describing myself my entire life. Up until that point, I had felt really alone. Like, I never knew anyone who thought like me. I really just thought I was this broken mess that couldn't relate to anyone but, well, like my wife, who, strangely enough, is a woman. And then all of a sudden, to find people I actually was able to understand and connect with, like, it was crazy. It was mind-blowing. Like, nobody converted me. I just, for the first time in my life, saw people like me. I had words to describe myself. I understood why my entire life I couldn't ever even go to the mall without being depressed for the rest of the day. Because even without realizing it, I would have this crushing dysphoria and envy. So I'd avoid malls. Like, I had dysphoria before I even knew I was trans. Once I figured it out, I was able to understand where that unrelenting sadness came from. The biggest change, though, I understood myself. I was able to reconnect with who I knew I was way back before I even started school. I was able to recontextualize my entire life and realize the problem my whole life wasn't me. It's that I wasn't me. I've been wearing a mask for over 3 decades, and it's so freeing to take that off. It's so much easier to stand up for yourself than some fake persona you don't even believe in. Now, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Like, I haven't been acting. I've just kind of had a filter over who I am. You know, only letting approved behaviors out. Like, I've always been me, but I've had to hide and restrict a significant portion of my personality. You know, I hid behind the idea that I was, just being professional. Like, so, here I am. I'm me. Like the video, dislike the video, subscribe to the channel, or unsubscribe. It's your life, do what you want. And you know what? To celebrate taking off that mask, in a never-before occurrence on my channel, I'm taking the safety off for what would most likely be the only time, but just for this one time, to say, let people be who they are. And if you're so fragile that someone's mere existence bothers you, or someone living their life in a way that's different than the way you would live it bothers you, and you feel the need to tell others how to live their own lives, I would like to kindly invite you to go fuck yourself. To the rest of you beautiful people, game on.